mechanism. Right, this will be the Audits and Government Efficiency Committee meeting for Tuesday, May 24th. Councilmember Zine, also on the committee, Councilmember Bernard Parks and Greg Smith. And if they arrive, we will include them in the meeting. I know Mr. Smith was not in council. I don't know about Mr. Parks. Okay, Mr. Parks, another committee. Okay, Mr. Parks, another committee, and Mr. Smith's not going to be here. Okay, very well. So we have on the agenda 5 items. We're going to continue item number 3. If you're here on number 3, we will not call that today. Also, number 4 is going to be continued. So 3 and 4 continued. And the first item we're going to take up, number 5, and then we'll go to 2 and 1 or 1 and 2. Number 5, please.
Item number 5 is a city controller report relative to extending the term of agreement C-109974 with Simpson & Simpson CPAs for the annual audit of the Community Redevelopment Agency. This item is also referred to the Budget and Finance Committee.
Okay, on that item, representing.
Councilmember,
yes.
My name is Shane. I'm representing the Controller's Office.
Controller's Office, okay.
My name is Lisa Johnson-Smith. I'm representing the City Administrative Officer.
All righty.
Steve Valenzuela, representing the Community Redevelopment Agency.
Okay, so we have this item before us on the continuation of the Simpson & Simpson. They've been doing audits for quite a while for the city. And can you give us some details, please?
Councilmember, the City Administrative Code requires the City Controller to arrange for an annual audit of the CRA. Simpson & Simpson, as you can see, were awarded the contract back in 2006, and they have completed the audits of 2005, 2006, 2006, 2007, 2007, 2008. Also, in 2009, City Council approved the extension of the contract for 2 additional years. We are asking for the 6th year extension of the contract. This is due to the fact that the CRA is going through some uncertain times, and we would like to just, instead of issuing a new RFP, we would just like to extend it in order to do the audit for 2010-2011 audit year.
And this shows an increase of approximately $38,000.
That is correct, Councilmember.
In these hard economic times, you'd think there'd be a reduction instead of an increase.
Councilmember, the increase is due to certain reasons. Simpson will need to conduct extra work in certain areas. For example, the CRA went through an ERIP program also, just like the city. With certain staff members, key staff members not being there, they, Simpson & Simpson will have to conduct additional work with regards to making sure that they have the proper accounting procedures in place. Also, there have been 2 new GASB pronouncements, GASB 47 and 54. And also, they will need to do some additional work to audit the cooperation agreement with the city.
Okay. What if the CRA no longer exists? If it is abolished, which has been proposed by the state, what happens then?
In that case, I suppose we wouldn't have to conduct an annual audit anymore of the CRA. I'm presuming this. I'm not sure about this. But we would have to finish all the audits up to the year, up to the time that they have been in existence.
And this goes till when?
This is the audit of the just completed fiscal year 2010-11. The audit year that's going to be
complete.
If
the CRA were to discontinue operations, it wouldn't impact this particular audit?
No, it would not.
Only future?
Yes.
Because we want to make sure that we have that option if necessary. And this is required by the rules, the procedures. What do you have to say about this, Mr. CRA?
Thank you, Councilmember. Mr. Min is correct. This audit, regardless of what happens with the current discussions going on in Sacramento. This is the audit for the fiscal year ending June 30 of 2011, the current fiscal year that we're in. This audit's required. It's required under both redevelopment and state law. It's the single audit, the submission to HCD, to the state controller, and all the other required requirements, together with the audit that's required under the oversight ordinance with the City of Los Angeles.
And you're requesting a transfer of $44,056 from reserve fund to pay for this. And we expect that to be reimbursed by the CRA.
Yes, Council.
Yes, Lisa Johnson Smith, the City Administrative Officer, we concur with and support the recommendation for the reserve fund transfer, the $44,000, and the CRA is reimbursing that.
And this complies with our fiscal policies, with the reimbursement.
Yes.
All right, so everything's in order, so we're complying with the rules. It is going to cost additional $38,000. That's because of additional work they have to do.
That is correct.
Okay. All right, so there'll be a recommendation on this to approve that audit with Simpson and Simpson. That matter now goes forward as a recommendation. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
And
Council.
let's go to number 2.
Item number 2 is a city controller report relative to the audit of the city's parking citation process at the Los Angeles Department of Transportation.
Anybody here? Don't all jump up at once.
Controller make a presentation.
Okay, number 2. So who wants to start?
Rick Taguchi, Controller's Office. Did you want a brief summary of the audit?
That would be good, please.
Okay, our audit report was issued May 19th. The objective was to assess the adequacy of controls and the efficiency and effectiveness of the city's parking citation process. This included determining whether the parking citation vendor, who was ACS, is complying with key aspects of the contract and that DOT is exercising proper oversight over the contract. And the audit covered citations issued between July 1st, 2008 and June 30th, 2010. Overall, we found that ACS is generally complying with the terms of the contract. For example, we noted that they have adequate controls in place to ensure that all parking citation revenue is properly accounted for. However, we found that DOT could improve its contract oversight relative to collection activities. For example, we identified certain areas where DOT could better maximize revenues. Some of the findings that we had: DOT has a backlog of complaint and investigations, which resulted in dismissing over 4,000 citations due to untimely investigations. The city attorney has advised the department that any citation that has not had an investigation completed within 240 days should be dismissed. As a result of not meeting that 240-day deadline, about $125,000 in revenue was lost. Secondly, DOT has paid over $400,000 for processing voided transactions, even though there's no processing or collection efforts involved. So for example, when a officer in the process of issuing a citation notes that he has made a mistake, the citation is voided. The city pays ACS the same fee whether the citation is voided or whether it just goes through the regular process. So for a regular citation, they would have to send out collection notices. If it's voided, there's really nothing else to do. It's not even really an issued citation. So the contract is not really specific in terms of the definition of what a issued process citation is. It's not really clear. So they've been paying that fee since the beginning of the contract.
When did the contract begin?
I think the beginning one is 2006.
2006?
The current contract.
Okay.
With respect to the gold card desk, we found that it's not adequately controlled. Fines and penalties were waived without proper supporting documentation. During a 2-year period, the Gold Card desk canceled about 1,000 citations. We sampled 40 of these citations and found that 9 had no explanation for the cancellation, or the cancellation was not done in accordance with the department's procedures, which required certain forms to be filled out. Also, the department lacked comprehensive policies and procedures for the Gold Card desk, which would include identifying specific individuals who have the authority to approve the cancellations. So in other words, a lot of times we saw emails from various staff within DOT to the Gold Card desk saying, just please cancel a citation. And there's no written policies and procedures with respect to who has the authority to make those requests.
Did it show if there was an investigation or just cancel the citation?
Excuse me?
Did it show if there was any investigation to
It varied.
that cancellation, or was it just cancel the citation
Quite a few of them just said, please cancel the citation.
with no justification or
Is
reason?
that correct?
Okay.
And then lastly, the city failed to collect about $550,000 over 2 fiscal years because the department did not consistently assess administrative fees and penalties for citations related to expired registration stickers. So the typical fee for a expired citation or expired registration is $25. However, if the individual produces evidence that he had registration, that fee can be reduced to a $10 administrative fee. The department did not assess that $10 administrative fee on over 33,000 citations. In addition, they did not assess another $225,000 in fees and related penalties on 3,800 other citations. The department generally agreed with the findings and recommendations. Throughout our audit, we brought our findings to DOT management's attention, and they were very responsive. They immediately took a lot of action on several of these issues to correct the problems.
Okay, our controller has arrived. Would you like to have any comments on this? Ms. Gould?
I'll come and be brief if you would like. Sure. And I think we can start getting into the actual audit, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry.
And Ricky, where were you on in the audit? So I don't want to duplicate anything you've said.
Pretty much all the main findings, which included the Gold Card desk, which was
Okay,
Oh, we want to welcome you by wishing you, which I did yesterday.
you did.
Now you're a day
Now you're going to tell everybody how old I am from
Well, I'm just gonna
yesterday?
wish you that
Okay.
yesterday was your birthday. I'm not going to tell them your age. That's a secret.
I'm-
Yesterday was the controller's birthday.
It was, yes. I survived it.
Yes, you did.
I've reached another decade, just so
All
you
right.
know.
Okay.
Barely. Thank you, and thank you to Department of Transportation and to my staff. And I know there were 2 other items that you're continuing till next week or whenever the next meeting is.
Right.
So we're more than happy to present when those come up as well. As you know, last week, as mentioned by Ricky, and again, I will be brief, I released the audit on the city's parking enforcement program, and this had been initially based on a whistleblower complaint about some of the citation issues. And as they went in, they identified a number of areas that we thought were important. As you also know, the audit called for the swift end to the Gold Card ticket desk after the audit had revealed that there were 1,000 tickets dismissed without appropriate documentation. Since then, of course, we have asked for the 1,000. I met yesterday with the general manager as far as timing on that and the ability to gather all that information. I think as well in our audit that one of the concerns we had that there was a lacking of specific policies to guide the review of these citations and creating a risk for inappropriate cancellations. Since my audit was released and my recommendation to disband the service, that the mayor did ask the department to close particularly the Gold Card desk down. My job, as you know, and now you as the chair, as to bring to you issues, is to identify problems and fix them, and that's what we're doing here. And that we think the opportunity to be independent, to fix the issues, and particularly to have everything shine a light on it. That's what is so critically important, is to be transparent and accountable, and that we need open and transparent government. We hope to have the information by the end of this week, and our auditors to review the documentation for the 1,000 tickets that were either reduced or canceled, and to be able to provide that information to you and to the public. And I think particularly we want to assure people and to look that if there was any impropriety for that to be put out there in the public eye, and to track down every ticket as it was disposed of. As I mentioned, the importance of the fair and equal access, and I think that we live up to our commitment of providing customer service to anyone who lives in the city of Los Angeles and either believes they were unfairly given a ticket or have a question regarding their ticket. As mentioned by Ricky, and I will just briefly, there were 3 or 4 other items that we thought were critically important that were revenue-generating opportunities because of poor contract oversight and internal policies. One was the administrative fees that would have been about $557,000 that we thought were important, related to expired registration stickers and vehicles with no evidence of registration, which would have been about $328,000. In addition, the collections from protective plate holders who had failed to pay their citations. The department had since 2009 improved that system. Prior to that had not pursued those citations, and now have begun pursuing those citations for those that had protective plates that we didn't know necessarily who was accountable for the payment of that at the time. Additionally, we felt that there was an improvement on those tickets that had been challenged that were not done in the 240 days. And of course, lastly, on the processing of the ACS and those that were had already been actually voided before that they were processing those, and we were charged a fee related to that. So I look forward to the general manager and I met yesterday to begin to discuss how we work on implementation and moving forward on these audit recommendations, as well as the other audits that we have put forward, and to work with your committee for those items as well that are needed to have adopted by the City Council.
Thank you. And I thank the controller for being here for bringing this matter forward. The way it works is the controller does an audit, comes to this committee reviews it, makes recommendation, goes to the council adopts a new policy, and everyone lives happily ever after. That's the way it's supposed to be. And what troubles me on this matter is there's a lot of revenue, and I don't want to condemn and criticize our current interim general manager. How long have you been in that position?
5 months and 3 days.
Okay, 5 months and 3 days. You definitely jumped in the seat at the right time. But a lot of this has happened prior to your appointment as the interim general manager by the mayor, and I know that this situation has been going on for a long time. When I look at ACS contract 2006 and recognize that if a citation is in error, for example, the Department of Transportation and traffic officer writes a citation, then suddenly discovers there's a handicap placard that's visible but didn't see it for whatever reason, or were distracted, that's a very expensive ticket. How much is that ticket now, handicap?
How much is it? About $365.
$365. So we would not want to saddle someone with that type of citation. So if that was canceled, ACS is still charging us the same fee to process as if we were issuing that citation. That to me is outrageous for ACS to have a charge when a citation isn't even processed. That to me is taking money away from the city that shouldn't be taken away. If it's canceled, if it was inappropriate, and the officer discovered that, because I know Los Angeles Police Department, when they have an error in a citation, they cancel the citation. There's documentation that goes with why it was canceled, and it doesn't process through. If it's not processed through, why are they collecting on that? That's a problem. The $557,000, the $328,000, why DOT can't get an investigation done in 240 days, that's another serious question that is raised. But I think all the attention was really given the gold card, and the gold card would really created the attention of the public and the media, and what we want to do is discuss all the issues of the audit, not just that gold card aspect, but there's obviously troubles with the revenue collection within the DOT process, and I think ACS taking advantage of the city with the contract, and somehow, when's that contract up for renewal?
It's currently on a month-to-month, sir, and we're in the process of releasing a new request for proposal by the end of this fiscal year.
So I think whatever we do, if that citation is canceled, it's not processed, we can't be charged. That's one issue. What we have to do internally is what has to be done through the policy change But that, to me, is really quite an embarrassment to them, charging us when they're not giving us a service for the ones that aren't processed. So we want to be transparent, as the controller said, the gold card desk, which I think if they had had a different name, it would have been a whole lot different, and it was 15 to 20 years. I understand that program's been in place, and Marketing 101 would know that the name, the title, VIP, we could just call it the VIP get out of jail card, that has a bad connotation. And the gold card or the platinum card, or if you've got your American Express card, and I do have an American Express card and it's connected to my Costco card. So that's what I have as far as prestige cards. When it comes to that, it sends a bad message to the public, and we want to clarify that. The 1,000 listed, there were 1,000 citations that were reviewed, and I understand 40 of the 1,000 were audited. Out of the 1,000, 40 were actually audited.
Yes, that's correct.
So out of the 40 is where you discovered the issues and the problems.
Correct.
So the rest of the 1,000, we didn't. We just took that batch at 40 out of the 1,000. That's where you discovered these problems. So there could be more, could be fewer, based upon that. So we didn't audit each and every one of the 1,000, just 40 of the 1,000.
Yeah, we only requested documentation on 40 of the 1,000 in terms
Okay.
of asking for support documentation of why it was canceled.
I think it's important that, that the other aspect of it is there were no policies in place that would direct that. So it is it begins to be a combination of these items
They
that
add
we
up.
think is critically important. And so that's why we thought that they needed to review that particular process and close it down, because they didn't have the policies to determine and the documentation and those that we sampled.
It was rather loose, and I had heard about this. I've been with the city for over 40 years, and I heard about this not as a member of the police department, but when I became a council member, I didn't know about it. And maybe the last couple of years I heard about this gold card, never even using it. Then I started checking with my staff, and someone gave me and my staff a gold card. I now, do we have that for display? Does anyone have a gold card? Because there's this infamous gold card that you would think you could pass out or get at a swap meet, and it says gold card. So that's what I found out, that actually some of my staff, when we started doing a review on this after the audit was completed, they had used that process. When a constituent had called the office and said, I received a citation appropriately and improperly, I discovered that my staff had on occasion, there it is, the gold card, the famous gold card. Phone number. Now, if the general public would have this, but they didn't have this, this was only available, I understand, to elected officials, their staff, and the mayor's office, and their staff. So if someone called in to a council office, the mayor's office, I received a parking citation, it's inappropriate, whatever the case may be, to have that matter reviewed, there's the phone number they'd call. And I understand, speaking with DOT personnel, this was supposed to be used after the administrative process was exercised, not after you receive a citation at 1 o'clock and then call the office at 2 o'clock and then say, by the way, what can you do to fix my ticket, which is not the process at all, but that was the interpretation. So my staff had used that. They weren't real pleased with the results. Oftentimes they said they didn't get a return call, but in fact my office was involved in that, and we were trying to find out, of the 1,000 that were brought forward, what offices used them, what was the decision, what was the justification. If you've got a broken meter, that's one issue. If you have a handicap placard, or if your car's broken down, I mean, it's easy to say my car didn't start. Well, what's the documentation to show your car didn't start? Are we just believing them on the face, or are we actually checking it to verify? And being of the police nature, we always want to show proof and verification. So I think that matter was rather loose, and people had too much of an opportunity to maybe satisfy a constituent that called in and try and have them happy, but at the same time creating what we have is this controversy about the gold card. The controller's audit clearly showed not only the issue with that, but if you start adding up, we're talking over $1 million in lost dollars that could have been collected because they weren't collected. That's a tremendous amount of money. 33,000 citations, 550,000 lost revenue. And when there's a policy in place that says if you get a citation for not having your registration and you go down and you then have it corrected, and there's an administrative fee. There's an administrative fee when you get your car impounded. There's an administrative fee for basically everything. And we just all of a sudden waive those administrative fees. I don't know who gave the authority to do that. And I think maybe the policy didn't exist, or if it did exist, there needs to be a retraining, a policy manual that explains we're not trying to cheat the people. We're trying to have them pay what is fair and what is reasonable in the effort that we're trying to do to maintain traffic. And the motto from the Department of Transportation is very clear: keep traffic moving. But at the same time, when cars are blocking the roadway, you have to do your job with that. The issue that comes to hand is that originally it said there's no documentation. All we know is that there's 1,000 citations, they were dismissed, or somehow the fine wasn't collected, but there is somehow a paper trail. And what I want to do with this committee is have that brought back. Now, it may be embarrassing to some people, and it may be somewhat embarrassing to the administration of the city, but the fact of the matter is, if it happened and you justified the cancellation of that citation, but what really troubled me is if a council office were to call instead of the gold desk and say, by the way, this is a nice person, I think we should cancel this ticket. That is really inappropriate. And when you receive a moving citation, there's an administrative process. There's a process through the court. There's a process when you receive a parking citation. If you don't agree with it, there's a process, a legal administrative process where you can contest that, whatever type of citation it is. So there's already a remedy in place. What creates, I think, the issue with the public is when they say, you're a VIP and you have a gold card. And because you have the gold card, you don't have to follow the process and you can avoid that. It doesn't go on your driver's license. It doesn't affect your insurance. But the fact is it affects the revenues of the city of Los Angeles. And when it comes to Department of Transportation, how many citations are issued annually in the city of Los Angeles by parking enforcement personnel?
Approximately 2.7 million per year.
2.7 million. And out of the 2.7 million, how many does the DOT cancel for whatever reason?
Out of that population, if I can just may speak to the actual, the audit period for that 2 fiscal years, I believe it was about 5.7 million citations issued. What the auditor staff looked at were asked for all of the citations that had a suspend code, so meaning they were suspended or canceled, and that number was approximately 285,000 in that 2-year period. That's all the general population. Within,
so 285,000 citations issued that were asked to be canceled.
in the overall system out of that 5.7 million.
And that's 5.7 million is obviously a lot of citations, but also 285,000 is a lot.
Typically, I think on average, we've seen anywhere from the numbers of citations that are issued. Typically, you get about a 6% to 7% administrative review. Again, I'm just talking average numbers, and we'll report on the exact details for you, council member. So out of the 6 to 7% that actually go through a administrative review process, then approximately 40% are dismissed, 60% are found valid in general. But for this 2-year period, from the 285,000, approximately 1,000 that the audit found had to do with the gold card desk because they have a special suspend code. So out of 285, approximately 1,000 was assigned to the gold card, and as you mentioned, within that 1,000, they sampled 40, and within the 40, they found, I believe, 12 that didn't have the proper documentation, not the 1,000. But we are working with the controller to provide her staff all of the information, as you've asked, to come through and provide all the information.
And on the 285,000, that seems a lot of citations to cancel. There's documentation.
There, of course. I mean,
along the
this is. I mean, we go through. We're a large organization, and again, there are many circumstances. It could be duplicate. It could be errors. It could be the sign wasn't there. I mean, we do have 100% rules and procedures in place for administrative reviews, and everything went through the same process, whether it was for the general public or the gold card desk. And to be honest with you, council member, I just, I couldn't agree with you more on the name. If I was here in 1996 when this originally started, I would have not called it the gold card desk, but it is what it was called. And if I may, because
when
I know
when did it start? Actually, when did it start?
This program began in 1996 as an added value to our Parking Violations Bureau. That's the contract that we go out. And once the request for proposal was sent out in early 1995, the responses came back in 1996. And at the time, the company was Lockheed Martin. They provided this extra service as an extension of the existing constituent services that was present.
So if someone were to call the council office or the mayor's office about a parking citation, that was the purpose of the gold card?
It was used as an extension of the constituent services to help the public that have extenuating circumstances, as well as the elected officials, as well as DOT, city agencies, other departments that have a responsibility to respond to their constituency. It's nothing different than people calling you for a tree that is blocking abandoned vehicles, other requests that they go through the process, and perhaps they may not get the necessary response, so they pick up the phone or they contact their elected official to help them with that request.
So this card wasn't issued, distributed to the public to say, you get a parking citation, you call this number and that will be dismissed?
No,
because there's some perception that was done.
It's very unfortunate, but that's a mischaracterization. That card is just a business card. It is not a gold card. It is not a
It's called a gold
swipe card. It was a way, from a marketing point, that the ACS at the time, Lockheed Martin, provided it in a form of a business card that could then be provided to offices that had those extenuating circumstances. Along with that, there was additional information provided that all elected officials and their staff were to understand that their staff have to make sure that the constituent goes through the Parking Violations Bureau. That's the whole administrative review process. And if there were extenuating circumstances, as you mentioned, we just had one the other day where a person was arrested, was jailed, couldn't move the car was ticketed. Based on the proof that was presented to us that this person was in fact arrested on this day, released on day, that ticket was dismissed. There are medical conditions. There are a series of different extenuating circumstances that by law were applicable. DOT has the ability to investigate, look at the facts that is presented to it, and provide that.
Let me read what it says in the back of the card. We're joined by my colleague, Councilmember Parks. The Parking Violations Bureau recognizes that you may have an urgent need to resolve any parking citation matter which requires special attention. Please call our Gold Card Service Hotline by dialing the telephone number listed on the face of the card. You will be immediately connected to our Gold Card specialists. So when you see that and you understand the intended purpose and not what has become the controversy, as our controller knows, being a former council member, constituents call on issues from potholes to trees to parking citations which they don't think are being given proper or direct attention. So I can understand the intended purpose of it, but it was never intended, or to your knowledge, never given to the private citizen to say, here's this card, you get a citation, and this will take care of it for you.
Yeah, there is no magic wand. That is not a magic card to get out of any ticket for any elected official or any body. We have, as I mentioned, a process in place. And in fact, council member, we passed out to every council office, every constituent services, a little pamphlet that talks about the rules, regulations, how to contest the parking citations, all the different processes that involved. And I'm happy to provide some more copies here. But again, it served as a customer escalation point. This is anytime you call someone and you're maybe not satisfied with what review you had, you ask for potentially a supervisor, someone that may be a little bit more knowledgeable, experienced to handle. They would have additional ability to investigate through Department of Motor Vehicles, for example, and other sources. And also, this desk served as a training for the other customer service representatives as well as DOT staff.
But the desk was staffed by city personnel or private
No, the
personnel?
desk was staffed by ACS. As I mentioned, the contractor, through its contract, per the contract, provided that additional service.
And the parking citations now are all done through an automated process? There's no handwritten, it's all done through a computer?
We have a very, very small percentage due to just certain officers that may have some inabilities to hold the computerized, but we've reduced that number, and there's newer technology that we're working on. But also, I think the other thing that is key it also served as a central point of contact for all of these different agencies so that different people weren't working. In fact, I did present all of the members of the council as well as the controller with our fact sheet, which was, again, as you mentioned, we're going to come back point by point going through all the different things, but I'm happy that the controller did acknowledge that we have, through the time that the audit's been done, made a lot of improvements in many of the areas. The complaints and investigations, we've reduced that backlog by over 90%. We've produced $725,000 in revenue.
That was on the 240-day delay?
Correct.
Okay.
90% reduction. We have another $469,000 pending. And again, it was
That's $469,000, not citations.
$725,000 received to date by May 12th. There's another
dollars.
I'm sorry.
I don't want to
dollars.
confuse dollars with citations.
$725,000.
Okay.
Another $469,000 pending. The other item brought up about the confidential plates, I'm happy to say that we did comply, and we did change some of the rules and improve that procedure where we now received $1.4 million. We've got a closure rate of 83%. So many of the things that's mentioned here, and I think the most important thing is that we have improved and tightened up some of the requirements, and again, in a full report back to you, what we talk a little bit about that, which is, with the age of emails and technology, I think what we could have done better here is there are emails, there are documentation behind some of these cases. It's just a matter of scanning them and making them part of the record, which wasn't done. But as early as I believe last December, we have cancellation policies in place.
So
We
no
have forms.
citation is going to be canceled without a written document to explain exactly why.
Absolutely. That's been in place for many, many years, sir.
Then who approves that? The person who cites the individual, are they the one? They could submit the request to cancel, but then what's the layers to have a cancellation approved?
It is currently with the adjudication and the ombudsman services only at DOT. ACS does not have the authority to cancel. All of those investigations, all of those components come through DOT, through business rules, through all the policies and procedures and guidelines that are presented, asking for the evidence, having the evidence be part of the records. All of that is in place, and we'll be reporting to you fully when we report back to this committee as well as the controller.
Is ACS here in the meeting?
Yes, they are.
Okay. They're represented. Okay, thank you. Mr. City Attorney?
Yes.
I see you're squirming to say something.
Well, keep in mind that this gold card process was an open process. It was part of the RFP that was before council several times, so it was public.
Well, see, the problem is, it's public, but only knowledgeable to those that were at that council meeting or watched Channel 35, and I'm a council member, and I've been around for the city over 40 years, and I didn't hear about it until maybe a couple of years ago. Heard that, and when a person comes to me with an issue, I give it to staff. Staff handles it. When the controller was a council member, she'd be at an event, someone brings something to her attention, there's always staff, we give it to staff, they follow up on it. We don't make the call and say, by the way, someone was cited or this or that. It's done by staff, so we have staff that does that work. I heard about the program, but never even using it. But then again, when we checked with our staff after the story broke, there were staff members, oh yeah. In fact, that's where I got the card from. Someone on my staff said, this is what it is. This is the gold card. I said, oh, interesting. But then we did verify that some of them had used it. Some weren't very pleased with the response, that no one called back, et cetera. But I think if we start analyzing staff in City Hall, we're going to find that staff in the council offices and the mayor's office, they were aware, because when a constituent received a citation and they weren't pleased and they called the council office, it's our job to try and remedy that situation and respond to that situation, not ignore it. Not cancel it, but say there's a process, and go through that process and find out how we can adjudicate.
But I think it goes to the fact that the department wasn't trying to hide anything.
No.
There's no nefarious intent here. It was simply to help council members deal with the situation.
Like I say, if it was titled something different, had a different description other than gold card, I don't think it would have been an issue. I think it would have been. But the other issues that trouble me with the audit, not that the audit was negligent or derelict, but there's a lot of money that should be collected that's not being collected, or people who aren't, for example, charged on the registration if you don't have it. I don't know where they get that authority to say, we're just going to waive this $10, because $10 mounts up, and you're talking $1 million+ when you start adding all those dollars together.
And Councilmember, if I just may, also, this information we're still gathering, but just looking at some of the raw data that we received, as I mentioned, you were doing the math as far as the numbers. In general, we were in the 40%, and out of that 1,000 that we looked at, there was a certain number that, again, was logged to mayor and council, which is a very small number. I believe it's less than 20%. But the same ratio applied. Approximately all the referrals from the mayor's office or the council office that went through the gold card saw approximately the same, about 40 to 45% dismissal rate, whereas the general population.
And
again,
the rest of it generated from DOT.
the rest of it is DOT. It could have been other offices, elected offices without law enforcement agencies, the sheriff's agencies, and there's others. So there is a lot of documentation, and that's why that's what it's taking a little bit of time.
Okay.
I did talk to Controller yesterday, and we had a good meeting, and and we are going to provide any and all information that is public, and we will do that. And just to finally, I think it's important to mention that we've provided a lot of information here as far as, I think, the background, but as stated, the mayor did direct me to shut down the gold card desk. That was done on Friday, May 20th. I informed all of the members of the city council as well as their staff that that's been done. And I am working currently on a plan to come back to you and the council, other council members as well as the mayor on as far as an action plan that is fair, that is equitable, that we will have a way to deal with potentially the constituents that still are going to call your offices and other offices. So we'll be reporting back. As of right now, I think the best advice is which is currently the way it is today, anybody that has received a citation where they feel it was unjust or they have a reason where it should have not been, then they contact the 1-800 number listed on this pamphlet. We've made it very easy now with the invent of the internet. We have a lot of information on our website, and through that begins an administrative review process. There are some rules and regulations within timelines. These are from the California Vehicle Code, so if you don't comply with certain dates and rules, there's not much we can do. And sometimes sometimes is the request to your offices that for whatever extenuating circumstances, they miss the deadline, for example, to contest, and they're asking your offices for extenuating circumstances and providing evidence. And if there is evidence of some sort that's documented, then yeah, there is an ability to perhaps reduce that or give them that chance to be adjudicated. And again, it's kind of complex. This isn't one size fits all. But I just want to let you know that the gold card desk was discontinued as of May 20th.
Gold card has now been put to rest. LAPD, they issue parking citations. How are those processed?
Through the same process, sir. There's only one. There's other agencies that
they don't have the computer.
Theirs is handheld, and they goes through the same processing. Goes through DOT. DOT processes that. Sometimes general services issues parking citations around City Hall. We process that. LAWA.
Was there any problem in the controller's audit with the other agencies that process parking citations?
We just audited the Department of Transportation. I think if
there's issues there in your review, you should look at that, and if there's LAWA or General Services or LAPD, since we haven't discussed those, to make sure that they're on the right page, make sure that they're doing it properly. I don't want to see another audit say, oh, by the way, we got DOT squared away, but now we got a problem with this.
Well, and we're looking within our office if there's other parts of the city where there's similar kinds of separate processes to be able to review. And I think it's important to note, and page 24, where we really outline where the challenges were in the 40 that were reviewed by our office, was that there was a process where they went through the adjudication, and then there was a process where the department reviewed them through the gold card desk review, and that there wasn't the same kind of documentation as to why certain ones were dismissed. They may or may not have been for the reasons appropriate, not appropriate. We didn't make judgment on that. What we said was you have to have documentation no matter what exists to be able to justify any cancellation, whether it's through the adjudication process or whether it was through the gold card desk process. And that was really what we said. They didn't have the same policies and procedures in place, and the number of people who could call and actually have the authority necessarily to say this one would be canceled. Those were the kinds of policy things that we identified in the process that put up red flags that we said needed to be much tighter going forward.
And I agree, they need to be in the new directive will direct and mandate that's done in that particular fashion. Mr. Parks?
Thank you very much. You know, one thing I was wondering when I read the audit is that how much is a lot of these things impacted by either loss of personnel or furloughs and things of that nature?
I could say, well, on the complaint and investigations, that's probably the biggest one, sir, that we had almost 6 to 7 at a certain period of time through not being able to fund. There was a time that we went through managed hiring and we were not able to get those bodies back. So from 6 to 7, we were down to 1. And unfortunately, these complaints backed up because it requires a physical investigation of the conditions. The curb color is faded, the sign wasn't there, so there's additional requirements. At that same time, for example, you brought the example of a meter. So yeah, we've had problems with our meters 2-3 years ago, so it had to take time, and we went through a 30% depletion in our meter technicians, and those are the ones that had to go get the history from the meter at the time that the person contacted them. Did the meter had that problem? So and you can see the results, Councilmember, by backfilling all those positions. I reduced 90% and got $725,000 with another $400,000 pending.
Yeah. But see, I think the dilemma is that, and this is where I think hopefully the policy committees could be of help to you. I would think that as everybody's struggling in cuts and managed hiring and a variety of things, it's one thing to say I can't get my positions filled. It's another to say it's costing the city $3 million that I can't get my positions filled. And I think that's what's needed to actually come to committee and shake people if they're not listening, and say, we have 1,000 cases that we haven't investigated. That's what I think is missing. I read all the articles about the gold card, and what was interesting to me was that I agree that you got to have documentation whenever you're dealing with citations and you're making another alteration as to the cost or canceling. I mean, that's tried and true. I was not offended that it existed. I think being offended was that we didn't manage it as well as we should have. I mean, we should have managed it to where anytime we make a decision that we're going to alter a valid citation, it should have all kinds of documentation so that no one gets an impression, as in years past, that, hey, I can make this ticket go away. That's the kind of things I think in looking at this, or when you look at issues on why we're paying for voided tickets. Those are things that are administrative that should have been caught by the department, and it's no small change. It's almost $500,000. And again, if we're sending tickets to ACS to collect the dollars, why are we sending them those that are impossible to collect? I mean, that's the kind of stuff that, as you go through this, it just compounds it, as to say, and again, I understand the loss of personnel. I mean, and you've been hit very hard, but I do believe that for your own self-preservation, if you could correct these things on your own, we wouldn't have these audits. But the only way to correct them is to wave a red flag and be able to be at committees and things and saying, let me tell you what's going to happen if this doesn't get fixed. And then you at least have, your document that says when the audit is done, I went to committee 17 times and they ignored me. That's what they're set up to do. And if they ignore you, they can't come back later and skewer you on the floor of the council and say, why didn't you do A, B, and C? But I just think there's some issues that you can't you can't justify in the fact if we're paying for tickets that are voided, if we're not investigating cases, a large number of them, and they go out of statute or whatever, we're changing the issue of a disposition of a ticket without valid documentation. Those things you just can't survive. I mean, they just can't, you just can't talk around them. Or where, you know, this other issue at the very end where we have
$272 million that needs to be write off.
no, the 272, we've gone through that 20,000 times. It doesn't exist. I mean, so, I mean, those who have watched that know it doesn't exist. I mean, so we can talk about that and have news conference and everything else. It doesn't exist. The issue, but when you get down to the issue of the handheld devices, why aren't we putting, you know, why aren't we implementing what we're paying for? Those are things that, as management, you would hope that you could have a little bit of slack and say it's not perfect, but when you go through this and say we're buying stuff that we're not using, or it's not implemented well, we're not getting our guarantees, we're not doing those things, that's where there's no way that you can be here and say I support management for these kinds of failures. Again, the gold card thing, I wasn't offended by it at all, because I would think, just being logical, that if you got a letter from a council office about a citation, I would hope you put some priority on it, just from where it came from. And so the issue is, but I would hope you'd have controls that would say, I got this letter and we looked into it and it was a legitimate ticket and they paid for it. I wouldn't want the letter there to say, I got this letter from the councilman and the ticket disappeared now, and a year from now we can't figure out why, because nobody can stand that heat.
No, and that's not the case, sir. So
That's the kind of things I think, and when I read it, a large part of it, I know you've been hit hard on personnel and the furloughs and all those other things, and when you can go from 7 to 1 or all that other stuff. But again, there's got to be a system where you got to alert the council that things are going down a slippery slope, and we can't manage our resources or these programs, and oh, by the way, we're losing several $1 million in the process. That's got to be shouted loud and clear. And again, if people ignore it, you've done your documentation, you've said what you got to say, and if the council says we're not going to do it, you know, and the key is just in the budget, how long did it take us to finally make some sense of special parking revenue fund?
7 years.
7 years. You know, but we at least have 1 year in process. It's got to be something that the department has to keep us alert of when things are going sideways.
And when they do, we sometimes listen and say we don't have any money to fund it. And you still have to muddle through it and make it work. Yeah. And that happens with the police department, building and safety, sanitation. And if you see the latest United States Supreme Court decision where 30,000+ inmates are going to be released, that's going to have an impact on crime. It's going to have an impact on law enforcement. It's an impact on our prosecutors, an impact on a lot of people. So one part of the mechanism moves forward and the rest of it sits idle, and then we've got a situation that creates controversy. So we've got a public speaker on this matter. Do you have anything else to say before we go on to the next matter? Because
no,
we're going to come back to number one next.
We will, as you know, we will be a full report to the controller on the point by point. There are other explanations, Councilmember Parks, that I think it's not here, but we will definitely provide that as we report back. I'm not clear if our response should be to the controller or you want a report back to you. Or is it?
Well, the controller's audit is done. I don't know if there's anything else go back to the controller's audit, or it comes to this committee now.
But generally, we ask for the department to respond to controller's action plan.
Okay.
In terms of when they plan to implement recommendations.
Okay, that's the recommendation for the action plan, but as far as the answers on the individuals, on the numbers, et cetera.
Report back to.
That would come back to this committee on the 1,000,
okay.
The 40 out of the 1,000. And then what we will do with this committee is send it forward to the council with any kind of policy changes, and to give you and your supervisor the ability to do what you need to do to keep it running smooth. Because obviously, you're dealing with meetings and general manager positions, and you've got supervisors up and down the chain to make sure with all your satellite operations, but you're the one who comes up to the hot seat. So we want to give you the tools to get the job done with your supervisors, and the controller wants to make sure that the audits follow through, and I want to make sure on this committee that we actually implement what has been recommended to be implemented.
We also ask for that documentation and support for the entire 1,000 tickets that we are expecting the DOT provide that to us, and controller is planning to do a further analysis on those and report back.
That's part of it.
That's part of the request, yes.
Right.
We received that, and I spoke with the controller. We're doing the best we can to provide it by the end of this week, because as I said, there's a lot of voluminous
I would say,
documentation.
I don't want to give you a week to do a work, I mean, it seems unreasonable to have 1,000 done in a week. It's just not humanly possible. So I'd like to do within 30 days to get the information back to us in 30 days, because if you're looking for 1,000 cases and trying to track down the paperwork, it's not going to take a couple of days to do that. If we're talking a few cases, we're talking 1,000. You know, who was it, what was it, where was it, who requested it, what was the dispo? I don't know. There's no way you're going to do 1,000 in a week, and I don't think there's any overtime, and I don't think it's a necessity since we've abandoned the program. We want to get the answers to the questions, but whether it's done in 5 days or 30 days, nothing's going to change. Whatever happened, happened. The documents are there, and we'll bring that forward. So I think to give you the adequate time to do it.
Thank you.
But
Well,
I would not recommend overtime to get it done. I don't think it's of a critical nature to do that.
Council, for the report back, 30 days would be fine, but for the purpose of controller's access to the records, we're supposed to get that by, I believe, by end of this week. And we would do our own compilation and analysis.
Well, you're doing something different. The control's out doing something different. We want to see is what they're going to bring forward with the documents.
It's the same. It's the same information. It's
I don't know how you can do it in a week.
I can't. I just was telling the controller I'm doing my best. I'm relying on ACS, but there's a lot of volumes of. It's not just a simple database. There's other additional information that's needed. So we will, as soon as we can, and obviously city attorney has to opine as far as what needs to be redacted or not. So it has to go their review, then to your office. So at this point, all I can tell you, the control is that we're doing the best we can.
Okay, well, let me say
guarantee
this.
week.
The controller's audit has been completed, correct?
It's been completed with one request for the follow-up to the issue related to the 1,000 tickets.
Okay, so what I would want is for that to come to this committee at the time it goes to the controller.
Same time.
So that way, at the same time, and I want to give you the time to do it. I think it's unreasonable to have that done in a week. I don't think it's humanly possible to get those documents done in a week. So, I mean, 30 days, if we can do it in 20 days, but let's do it no more than 30 days, that we would have that as a joint. We can bring it back at the same time, and that way we can plow through and find out what policy, because the controller can't issue policy, we can. And if we have to change the policy through the Transportation Commission, whatever needs to be done. And I understand we want to make it transparent, but we also want to make it realistic. And I don't think you can get that in a week.
Yes. Are they going to respond to the entire report or just?
Oh, the whole report.
Okay, good.
But we only, this is number 2. We're still going to go to number 1, but we have a couple comments from, let's see, John Walsh. Item number 2, Mr. Walsh. Mr. Walsh, number 3 has been continued. So we'll have you on number 2, Mr. Walsh, and number 3, as I said, has been continued, so we're not going to hear that one today.
John Walsh, blogging at HollywoodHighlands.org. 54,000 successful server requests a week. We are asking, and we will ask on our website, for a Public Integrity Division investigation by Steve Cooley. We have to find out whether these tickets were being fixed for money. Or what I'm told is that and instantly the mayor got 100%. Anytime he asked for a gold card fixing of a ticket, it was fixed. Did the mayor and some city council people trade fixing for tickets for campaign contributions? Nowhere else in America have we had this. Look out here. You see none of the regular City Hall reporters here. The reason they're not here is most of the City Hall reporters have had tickets fixed under the gold card. LA Times reporters, tickets fixed under the gold card. So we have the entire media. They had to pick one reporter here that didn't have a ticket fixed, who was a new reporter. I'm telling you right now, that what we're having here, Controller Gruhl, the first day, you know what happened. The mayor defended this. When he saw the media on the second day, he turned tail. We all know that happened. The dirty 1,000. And I'm telling you right now that the tickets have been fixed. John and Ken on their show say, we knew about it. Everybody seemed to know about this. But it was only because, and what did she say? What did they say? The reason was the audit was triggered by a city whistleblower, and the mayor is trying to find out who that whistleblower is so he can have him fired. You are all embarrassed. It is pathetic. And the LA Times, #1, doesn't want my list up there of the editors and reporters who have had tickets fixed in exchange for good press.
Well, I think you should take that information to the district attorney's office then.
Well, he'll come to you. You have the information.
So that is item number 2, Mr. Parks, and the matter will be continued.
Okay, let me just ask one question. The one thing I didn't quite understand is on, let me see, recommendation number 7. I didn't quite understand from the controller's perspective why there was an either-or, that you would calculate the collection rates on dollars versus number of citations, why you would not want both pieces of information.
We want that from the controller or from DOT?
I mean, but the thing is, it's just, they said that when collection rates are based on dollar amounts instead of on the number of citations issued, I would think you'd want to track both of those.
I think, Robert Andelon, Department of Transportation, I think during our discussions with the Office of the Controller, we looked at how we use the collection rates. And our primary purpose is to forecast fiscal year revenue. And based upon the model that we have, which is where we calculate the collection rate based upon citations paid, we're able to ascertain with a relative high level of accuracy what the fiscal year revenue will be. Using dollars and penalties, there's a possibility that if the citation is eventually canceled, that it basically skews the collection rate, gives you a lower rate, or possibly a higher rate, depending on where in the timeline the individual pays. I think under the current timeline, the citation is issued on day 1, day 37. If it's not paid, it doubles. 21 days later, you add another $25 now. 21 days later, you add another 21 and 3 if it goes to DMV. So it could conceivably go from a $50 ticket to a $145 ticket in a short period of time, which means your receivable is much higher, but if it's eventually dismissed, then your receivable drops down and your collection rate seems to be lower than it would be under if you had just counted the citations being paid in whole.
I understand that. I'm just saying, when they said either or, I would suggest you do both.
Yeah, we're going to attempt to do both. We agree that it would be something to look at, and then we would test the model.
Because it would also give you some idea of how many valid citations versus those who are canceled. You'd also have the dollar value, which we need. But I just didn't see it was an either or. I thought that it would be appropriate that we know both pieces of information.
Yeah, we said we hadn't done it before, but we would go ahead and try to do it that way. It's a new way of doing it. No other city does it for parking citation collections. So, but we will do that.
Amir, I think at some point, we're at something, 20,000 new meters? At some point, if the meters work well, as some of them are and whatever, you're going to find a reduction in revenue. And at some point, you're going to have to look at, somebody's going to ask you that, why tickets are down, and the answer is the meters are working. So you're going to get more money on the meters.
You've asked that question.
Yeah.
Budget and finance.
Yeah. So the thing is, it's pretty clear if the meters work, because we've heard now for decades that the meters didn't work is why I got a ticket. And we often look back at the citizen and said, oh, no, you're wrong, the meter worked. Then we found out, as we changed them out, that maybe they didn't work as well as maybe we thought. So if these new ones work well, you're going to have a reduction in citations because people have more options. They can get longer time and all that other stuff.
Credit.
And so look at the credit card. So I think that's got to be played into your answers too, in addition to your personnel, because the next question is going to be, why are citations down? And then you go through a litany of responses there. So I think your technology will make an impact on your future number of tickets in some regard, because if you're writing the identical number or more citations on meters with new meters, then we've made, I think, we have a concern as whether we went in the right direction.
Yeah.
That's the last couple of things
So that'll be the direction. Oh, one more item on for that contract with ACS. Since you're not going to have the gold card desk staffed anymore, will there be any reduction in the fees that were being charged since you're not going to be utilizing that service?
The contract, Councilmember, was comprehensive, so that was an added value built in. Currently, ACS charges the city per citation, and all of over 100 myriad of services are all within that price. So what we are doing is the two special customer persons will be folded back into the customer pool of Parking Violations Bureau, since the story has, received so much attention that it will be receiving phone calls. So they will go ahead and be absorbed into the system. So the city will still benefit for their use. Okay. In the new contract, in the new RFP that I mentioned, the gold card desk has been eliminated, but we're enhancing, again, just the overall Parking Violations Bureau type, the customer service side of things, in order for the public to be able to have better access on contesting their citations and getting status updates and so forth and so on.
And we also have to have removed, if that citation is canceled and not processed, we're not going to pay on those citations.
That clarification is part of the new RFP that will be released. And again, in our report back, we will explain how the current contract did not clarify as much as should, council member, and there is still processing done, even though what you're saying is correct, that it was voided, but there's still data entry, there's still the information is being downloaded from the handheld into the system, there's system support, but we'll get into that and we'll provide that detailed background when we report back to you in 30 days.
And what is the cost, whether it's a handicapped or a no stopping zone or a red zone or a fire hydrant? Is it one?
Different. No, they're all different. They're all in the...
there's no flat fee?
No, the flat fee was, as this contract had to do with the collections. When it went to collections, there was a flat fee of $21 that was added to the fee for collection, not to the tickets.
Well, so say that it cost $500 for a violation. Is the $500 fee the same as a $30 fee? In other words, if the violation fine is $500, which is obviously hypothetical, versus a fee of $30, is their fee the same, or are they proportion ratio on the amount?
It's per ticket, so it's per citation. The citation value doesn't matter. No.
So a $10 ticket is going to cost us the same amount to process as a $500 ticket?
In the current contract, yes.
In the current contract, okay. So it's not ratio of...
It's not ratio.
Okay. All right, so that's item number 2, which is going to be continued. We thank you for that. And let's go to item number 1, please. That'll be our final item today. And by the way, here's your gold card. I want to give that back to you. I'll keep it for a souvenir.
Yeah, you should frame it.
Item number 1 is a discussion item relative to correspondence from the mayor requesting the controller to conduct a management review of the Los Angeles Department of Transportation.
How you doing?
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chairman Zine and members of this committee, for inviting our office here today. I'm Jaime de la Vega, Deputy Mayor for Transportation. First, on behalf of Mayor Villaraigosa, I want to thank Controller Gruhl and her auditors for their work related to the Department of Transportation. The findings and recommendations that we've seen point to systemic issues that concern the mayor, and those must be fixed. I think you know that LADOT is an important city department that has delivered vital services and projects to our constituents. This includes synchronizing our traffic lights, managing street operations, and supporting the development of public transit, bicycle facilities, and private investment. In the mayor's May 20th letter to the interim general manager, he calls for a top-to-bottom management review of the department. I want to thank the controller again for agreeing to partner with our office on this effort. The mayor believes that a number of important issues need to be addressed. These include, first, where are there deficiencies in how the department is managed and how can these be improved? 2, are there organizational structure issues, internal communications, and reporting protocols? Are those set up to foster accountability and transparency? 3, what immediate changes are needed in the area of human resources, supervision, and discipline? And just as an aside to that, on April 27th, the mayor sent a letter to council proposing consolidation of the human resources functions in 10 city departments, including DOT, in part so there would be consistency in HR function and responses. 4th, how can the department improve record keeping and information systems? I think that was probably a key finding of some of the recent audits. How can the department improve contract management and project management? And finally, how can the department improve communications with both the public as well as the city's elected officials on their operations and their business processes? In short, we need to have a proactive and systematic approach to improving the department's operations. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay. Will, can, to the mayor's office, better clarify the specific programs that need to be investigated relative to the requested management review of DOT? Do they want it every single operation they have, or is it specified specific ones?
At this point, the mayor's view is that it should be top to bottom,
So
the entire department.
All programs?
Yes,
Okay.
all programs.
And there'll be coordination between the controller's office and the mayor's office?
Yes, we've already been in contact.
Okay. And for the controller, what resources is the controller going to need to perform this?
Well, we're still discussing with the controller.
Well, they're right there.
Oh,
You can want
they can, I have an answer as well.
Okay. I hope you got a checkbook, too.
I have that as well.
So the question was the resources you're going to need to complete the requested management review.
Yeah, controllers is in the process of discussing the resources needed to do the audit, and once that has been established, we follow our normal process of engaging an independent consultant, and we have a list of master agreement that have well-qualified firms that do this type of management reviews.
Now, how much is it going to cost?
It all depends on how we get to discuss and scoping of in the specific, depending on the further discussion with mayor's office and also as we develop the detailed scope.
Okay. And you're willing to cooperate with all this, obviously, interim general manager?
Thank you. Thank you to Deputy Mayor De La Vega for coming down, and I did receive the mayor's memo and took specific actions to discontinue the gold card, and as I replied to the mayor, I will be fully cooperative with the controllers, and really, if there are any weaknesses or issues, I want to address them immediately. So we will be working with the Office of the Controller. As Ms. Gruhl mentioned, we met yesterday, talk about that, and we will have further dialogue with both the mayor's office as well as the Office of the Controller.
And as far as personnel that you have, how short of personnel are you at this time?
I believe in my budget discussions, we are currently down approximately 27% from about 2 years ago. We had approximately 2,000 full-time and part-time, and we're down to just a little over 1,400 full-time and part-time.
So you were 2,000 personnel and 1,400. So we need to take that in consideration if there's new programs they want to implement. If they're down a substantial amount of people, how are we going to implement new programs? And one of the problems that we have is that we mandate programs, kind of like the state. They mandate a program, and there's no funding for it. So if we're going to come up with something, let's be realistic, maybe they want an inspector general for the office. I don't know. If whatever they need, we need to make sure that there's appropriations that go along with it. And Mr. Parks, being the chair of Budget and Finance, knows that we're struggling with the budget now. So we need to be realistic if we come up with all these wonderful ideas, how we're going to pay for them.
Mr. Chair, I think a key focus of the review from the mayor's perspective is optimizing the allocation of the department's resources.
Excellent. Okay. So it's a discussion item only, no action required on that. However, we have one comment from John Walsh, general comment. So we'll take that at this time, and that'll be our final item for the day.
John Wascalati in Hollywood Highlands, HIGHLANDS.org, emailing at hollywooddems@gmail.com. Who named it the gold card? I think it's very important to say, the LA Times said it was 20 years old. Today we find out 1996. It's 15 years old. Why is that important? It wasn't started under Bradley. It was started under Reardon. And we've been told we will get the names of those whose tickets were fixed. I heard that. But who fixed these tickets? And I'm asking you right now that if the mayor is not willing to release the names of the people, and I've been told by 3 different people that Eli Broad had 4 tickets fixed, Austin Butner 5 tickets fixed, and ask, well, where am I getting this information? I'm asking. You said go to the DA. Okay, everything I have is hearsay, but Deep Ticket is the person who went, you heard them say it today, Wendy Gruhl didn't use a dartboard to go after the gold card. She got a call from a city whistleblower. That whistleblower has told me that that whistleblower is panicked, that they have caused, and as you know, the mayor is a very, very spiteful, very, very vindictive. He knows the LA Times is not going to deal with this because their editors and their reporters are up to their nose in this filth. HollywoodHighlands.org for the truth.
May the truth be known. Mr. Parks.
Let me just ask the controller if we can ask you to think about adding a couple of items to the scope. One of them, I think Mr. Zine commented earlier, is the issue of the budget and personnel function impact is, I think, essential. And then also, I think would be important that not only do we look at the overall policies, procedures, in the sense of the department, but we also need to look at their management of the special funds that are under their control.
We will do that.
All right, so DOT, you've got the direction. Any other questions? Controller, you're satisfied with that?
Oh, let me ask one other question. Is Jaime still here?
Jaime's still here.
Jaime, let me ask you one question.
You should have left earlier, Jaime.
I'm sorry.
You had your chance.
With all of the things going on.
I'm here to serve.
With all the things going on about the management audit and such, do we have any indication of where the mayor's office on a permanent general manager? Or are we just going to let the interim hang in the wind with these audits and all that other stuff?
I believe the mayor submitted a letter to council for reappointment of Mr. Sidati as interim.
I know, but I'm saying, do we have any idea about a permanent?
We don't have a timing on that at this point.
Now, is that second interim, is there a timeline on when that expires?
Not at this time.
So, I mean, is that like forever?
Well, under the charter, I believe we'll have to make a decision within another 6 months.
6 months, okay.
Yes.
So the letter is a 6-month extension?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
The interim will be well experienced by that time.
I just didn't want him to take all this abuse and they bring in somebody spry and when it's all over and say, now that Amir fixed it.
Amir's gone. All right, that'll complete this session. Thank you very much.